So I'm going to be honest with you all. I'm a little wiped out. Anyone else? Yeah. And I acknowledge that I am someone with immense privilege. I am incredibly grateful. I am employed. I have 2 healthy, beautiful children. I have a spouse. We have a home and insurance. I speak fluent English and also Spanish, which is helpful these days. We can afford what we need. I'm not in fear for my safety, and that's more than I can say for many folks right now. But I also have a chronic illness, and my job is a lot right now. And my kids have a lot going on in their own lives, and the start of school has left my younger one pretty dysregulated. And to top it all off, the national and local news is so heartbreaking and infuriating and relentless that it is just a constant barrage of stress on our nervous systems. And I'm not telling any of you this for pity. I'm fine, but just to let you into my own experience, because I know my experience is my own, but that many of you probably share pieces and parts of it. And I hope that sharing makes us all feel less alone and more connected in our humanity. And so that is why today I wanted to talk to you all about Googly Eyes. Because I saw these pictures on the internet and I laughed so hard. I don't know why they struck me as so funny. Maybe it was just the right mix of tired and goofy. But I thought to myself, I have to share these in a Sunday service. We all need a smile or a laugh right now. And that video that we showed earlier of the little girls, they call it eye bombing. Just putting googly eyes all over the place is eye bombing. It's so joyful and silly. And so here's some other funny images that I found on the internet that I wanted to share with you because I hope they give you a little joy, because Lord knows we all need a little joy right now. So the first one is these guys. I love it. Oh, bell peppers. I will never look at them the same again. And the next one is like an HDMI cable or something. And then that washing machine filled with dirty laundry, or maybe it's a dryer. And I love the way the blanket hanging out is like a big tongue. And then the next one, so the one on the right is a door handle, and it's a little dark in the image, but the bottom, he's got like a big nose and then a little keyhole mouth, and he's like, oh, like this. And then the one on the left, that vegetable is called a chayote, and the image was titled Grandfather Chayote. Oh, it's so cute. Okay, so those are the images that I stumbled across on the internet, and I got myself asking, why are they so funny? What is it about them? A simple information search shows that 2 things make us get a kick out of these inanimate objects with googly eyes. One is the simple shape of the googly eye. It's very round, and human eyes aren't that round. Well, at least not inside our own heads. They are if you take them out of our heads. Don't do that, that's creepy. They're very round, and there's so much of that white that's visible on the googly eye, the sclera, and that sort of gives them this perpetually surprised look. That's something that makes it extra funny. And then the addition of the eyes facilitates something called pareidolia, which is the human tendency to see patterns where they don't really exist. So our brains are just constantly looking for patterns. That's why we can look in the clouds and see animals, or look somewhere, look in a piece of toast and see Jesus. And when we put the eyes, it helps. It facilitates the pareidolia, and immediately we see faces everywhere, and that is particularly funny. And the thing that makes me giggle is wondering what the bell pepper is so surprised about. Was it the act of being cut in half that shocked him? Was he surprised to see a human face staring back? Who are you? What made the washing machine sick? Was it teenage smelly socks in the load that day? And I just have such compassion for little grandfather Chayote. sitting on his little pile of other chayotes? Is he watching the shoppers go by? Did he get chosen? I sort of wonder about him like I wonder about those dogs in the in the Humane Society advertisements. Like, go get them. So that's why I wanted to talk about Googly Eyes, because if I can have that much empathy for a chayote, if we can anthropomorphize or humanize a vegetable, an appliance, a doorknob, a hole in the wall, then certainly we can do it for one another. If we have the ability to see a face where one doesn't even exist and wonder about the circumstances of their expressions, certainly we have the capacity to see humanity in each other's faces and have curiosity about or compassion for our shared human experiences. And I have found that because of everything I mentioned at the beginning of this sermon, my own tiredness, stress, illness, that I have found myself with a diminished ability, or maybe just a diminished willingness, to offer that grace to other people. I'm particularly struggling to offer grace to those who I am in disagreement with, or with those whose behavior I find particularly challenging. I find myself jumping to conclusions about their intentions, attributing all sorts of negativity to their actions, even when I have no idea what's really going on. And I have been on the receiving end of a fair amount of that too lately. I found out that someone who is really frustrated with me or is sure that I'm mad at them, when it turns out I didn't return their call because I was sick or something else. There is a psychological concept called the fundamental attribution error. The fundamental attribution error. It's a common tendency for people to attribute or give meaning to the internal characteristics of other people or their motivations, but not to their own behavior. That is, if you are short with me at the grocery store, obviously it's because you're just a simply rude human with no social skills. On the other hand, if I am rude to someone at the grocery store, it's because I have a headache, or I'm stressed at work, or I'm worried about this upcoming test my kid has to take. Notice that in that scenario, I'm willing to offer myself the benefit of the doubt because I know what's going on in my own world, whereas I'm not as willing to give the same grace to the other person. The fundamental attribution error says that my error is not in extending that same grace to other people, assuming ill intention or poor character rather than assuming or even just wondering about the fullness of their humanity. Remember that washing machine? I wondered why it was sick. Or maybe it was just thirsty. I don't know. I could generate at least 3 reasons why that bell pepper had a shocked look on its face. 3. Maybe it was getting cut in half. Maybe it was the human looking back at it that surprised it. Or maybe it was the dip coming at it. But why can't we do that? Why can't we generate even one possible reason for another human when we're struggling? The short answer is that our brains use shortcuts to save energy. Our brains take up a lot of energy. They're just constantly going and going and going, and so they use all these different shortcuts to save energy. And the fundamental attribution error, just like any bias in our thinking, is easier and faster for our brains than spending time and energy on curiosity and wonder, finding out what's going on with someone, or even generating imagined scenarios. That just takes more time. And when we're under stress, and most of us are right now, our brains get even lazier and even more prone to these shortcuts. If we know anything about the other person, then it's a little easier extending that grace. If the hypothetical person who is rude to me at the grocery store has 3 kids in tow, then I might think to myself, that person has a lot going on right now, instead of how rude Right? Just by seeing the children, I can kind of go, oh, maybe there's something else going on here. If it's my next door neighbor, I might think, I don't know much about them, but I do know that they never use their leaf blower until after 9 a.m., and I appreciate that. Maybe they're not all bad. Just knowing a tiny bit helps. When I was serving my previous congregation in Maryland, I found myself on the receiving end of some anger that was totally the result of the fundamental attribution error, and it was almost funny how far out it became. When I arrived as the fresh, new, young faith development minister, one of my main areas of focus was the religious exploration program for children and youth. So I spent the first few weeks cleaning out the closets and organizing the classrooms and the spaces, and then I realized that the outdoor space, the playground area, was falling apart. It was wooden, rotten, nails were sticking out. It was really unsafe. And so, in hindsight, I should have communicated more and had more of a process. But what I did was just call some volunteers together, and we dismantled the whole thing and tossed it in a dumpster. And it took a long time to resolve some major water runoff issues that were causing that original problem in the first place, so we couldn't just put a new playground down because it would have happened all over again. But people started talking, and a rumor started that Reverend Christina doesn't think children should play. She just wants to create this really academic religious exploration program. Now, looking back at that now, I laugh because anyone who knows me even a little bit knows that I love people of all ages and that I really love to have fun, like more than is probably reasonable for a minister. And it was so far outside of the truth that it was sort of shocking and kind of hurtful to feel like, really? People would think that about me? They think I'm a child fun-hating minister? But I actually just really needed to keep our kids safe. But once I realized what was going on, I worked to correct the misunderstanding, and all was well. And I also learned a very helpful thing about ministry: the power of explicit communication. Now, this is just a low-stakes example of the fundamental attribution error in real life. I bet you can think of examples when you have done this to someone else or when it's been done to you. It's a way that we flatten each other into a two-dimensional caricature, not allowing the possibility of our full humanity to shine through. And it's way easier to do this with people we don't know, with the person who disagrees with me about vaccines, or the person who's on the other end of the religious or political spectrum from me, or who would be counter-protesting when I was protesting. It's easier when we don't know the person at all to assume all sorts of terrible things about them. And I want you to just do an exercise with me. Think of one of those examples in your mind. Imagine that person who is diametrically opposed to you. You don't know anything about them, except for the fact of their philosophical or political or religious opposition. Just imagine that person in your mind. What pops up immediately? What do you assume about them? Just keep it to yourself. You don't need to shout it out. They're uninformed at best, probably stupid, right? Brainwashed by social media or a certain news outlet. Or they're just bad people. They're unkind, selfish, or at worst, evil. You might have come up with other words. If you were paying attention to the sermon, maybe your brain tried to run around those assumptions. Good for you. Maybe you tried to have a little curiosity or compassion for them. Because if we can do it for a door handle, we can do it for each other. Yes, we can wonder about them. Valerie Kaur, in the reading we heard, says exactly this, that she sees the other as a neighbor, a friend, a family member. She says, as I move through my day and come across faces on the street or the subway or on the screen, I say in my mind, sister, brother, sibling, aunt, uncle. I start to wonder about each of them as a person. Wonder is her antidote to her bias. which she is wise enough to know that she likely holds about almost everyone she encounters, silently renaming them as family in her mind helps her train herself to see them as fully human, the way I would with my own kin, with strengths and flaws and quirks and whole lives that impact their behavior. It helps her to see them in 3 dimensions. And I realize this is hard. I get it. In addition to our brain's habit of creating shortcuts, we humans also have a hardwired tendency to be defensive. Often when we misattribute behavior to some negative intention or character flaw, when we assume that someone is just a jerk because they acted that way, it's because they did something to hurt us. Maybe they hurt us a little, maybe they cut us off in traffic, but maybe they really hurt us. Maybe they're just acting in a way that we think people shouldn't act. And that's not directly hurting us, but our brains get defensive. And this perceived or real hurt causes all of our defense mechanisms to go off. And it's very hard for us to offer gentleness and grace and wonder. But I love what Valerie Kaur says about this. She says, I have learned that we do not need to feel anything for our opponents in order to practice love. Love is the labor that returns us to wonder. It's seeing another person's humanity, even if they deny us our own. We just have to choose to wonder about them. I don't owe my opponents my affection, warmth, or regard, but I do owe myself a chance to live in this world without the burden of hate. Laboring to love my opponents is how I love myself. As Unitarian Universalists, our new shared values say that we place love at the center of everything we do. And if you read the 7 values, the shared values, each one is laid out very clearly with a word, a definition, and a covenant statement, or a statement of how we're going to practice that. But love isn't defined in the shared values, which at first really bugged me. You're going to define all the other ones, but not love? But then I realized the other ones define love. How do we know if we are practicing love? Anyone says that they're practicing love. The preacher screaming at people at a protest thinks he's practicing love. How do we know? Because those other 6 values, if we're doing those, then we're doing love. And in times like these, we can use all the love we can get. Remember, if we can humanize a vegetable, we can humanize each other. All it takes is to slow down a bit and wonder. Not for them, maybe for them, but it doesn't have to be for them, but for us. I've heard the saying that holding a grudge is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. Hate is drinking poison and hoping it harms the other person. Don't drink the poison. Just set it down. Be gentle with yourselves, dear ones. You deserve all the gentleness and love that you can get, and all the love and gentleness that you can give. We don't always know the inner battles that each of us is fighting, and we do well to remember to be compassionate to ourselves and to others. And my prayer during this difficult time in our world and our lives is that we can each have a little more laughter and a little less judgment and a lot more grace in our lives. Amen. And may it be so.